In July 2010, the quiet town of Cedarville, Indiana, was rocked by the sudden disappearance of Jacob Callahan, a well-loved handyman known for his kindness and dedication to his community. By March 2011, the mystery deepened when Jacob's body was discovered buried under the patio of his own backyard. What began as a missing person case turned into a chilling tale of betrayal and greed. An investigation would reveal the dark secrets of his wife, Helena Callahan, and her lover, Michael Trent, exposing the shocking lengths they went to for their forbidden love. On the crisp spring morning of March 6, 2011, Cedarville police officers were dispatched to a modest home on Willow Creek Drive. The air was still, carrying the faint scent of fresh grass, a stark contrast to the grim discovery that awaited. A tip, delivered anonymously the night before, led officers to the backyard of 127 Willow Creek Drive, where a life once full of promise had been cruelly snuffed out. The house belonged to Helena Callahan and her new husband, Michael Trent, a couple whose lives seemed idyllic from the outside. As officers began digging under the neatly maintained lawn, the atmosphere grew tense. Neighbors peered through parted curtains, their faces a mixture of disbelief and dread. By mid-morning, a crowd had gathered along the sidewalk, whispering theories about what might lie beneath the soil. The digging continued, shovels slicing through the earth, revealing layers of damp dirt and tangled roots. Then, just before noon, the discovery was made. The distinct edge of a tarp came into view. Its dark material stretched tightly around a human form. Officers exchanged somber glances as the lifeless body was carefully unearthed. The remains were later identified as Jacob Callahan, a man beloved by the Cedarville community. Known for his kindness and skill as a handyman, Jacob had been reported missing 8 months earlier. At the time, his wife Helena had explained his absence with vague references to marital strain and erratic behavior. But now, the community's worst fears were realized. Jacob had never left Cedarville. He had been silenced and hidden beneath the very ground he had worked tirelessly to maintain. The days that followed brought a whirlwind of activity. On March 8, 2011, Helena Callahan sat in an interview room at the Cedarville police station. The setting was sterile, with harsh fluorescent lighting casting unforgiving shadows. Her demeanor, however, was anything but chaotic. She appeared calm, composed, her fingers resting lightly on the table in front of her. When questioned about Jacob's disappearance, she described his behavior as distant and uncharacteristic in the weeks leading up to his vanishing. She implied that he might have been struggling with inner demons, a convenient narrative that had initially diverted suspicion away from her. Michael Trent, who had quietly entered Helena's life in the months following Jacob's disappearance, was also questioned. He supported Helena's story, insisting that he had only begun his relationship with her after Jacob had supposedly left. His tone was measured, his responses deliberate. Yet, despite their composed exteriors, investigators quickly noticed cracks in their story. Forensic analysts combed through the backyard and the modest home Helena once shared with Jacob. Soil samples taken from the burial site contained microscopic fibers matching a tarp found in the garage. The fibers were also consistent with traces found on Helena's gardening gloves, gloves that had been carelessly tossed into a corner of the basement. These details, while subtle, began to paint a damning picture. Financial records uncovered during the investigation revealed more startling evidence. Helena had drained Jacob's savings account in the weeks leading up to his disappearance. The transactions were substantial, including purchases of high-end furniture and unexplained cash withdrawals. This newfound spending spree contrasted sharply with the financial prudence Jacob had been known for. Neighbors, too, began sharing observations that cast doubt on Helena's claims. Several recalled seeing Michael's truck parked outside the Callahan home late at night, long before Jacob was reported missing. Others mentioned Helena's sudden shift in demeanor following Jacob's disappearance. Once reserved and somewhat distant, she had transformed into a vibrant, outgoing figure who often hosted gatherings at her home. Detectives pieced together a timeline that suggested a far more sinister narrative than the one Helena had offered. They learned that Michael had been a regular visitor to the Callahan home under the guise of a business acquaintance. What began as a professional relationship had quickly turned into something deeper, with the two engaging in a passionate affair. Witnesses described seeing Helena and Michael together at local events, their chemistry undeniable to anyone paying attention. By the end of that fateful week, investigators had enough evidence to consider Helena and Michael prime suspects. The body, the financial records, the fibers, and the whispers of an illicit relationship all pointed to a chilling conclusion. What had started as a quiet investigation into a missing man had now unraveled into a web of betrayal, greed, and cold-blooded murder. The facade of normalcy that Helena and Michael had so carefully constructed was beginning to crumble under the weight of undeniable truths. The investigation had only just begun, but the echoes of Jacob Callahan's tragic end were already rippling through Cedarville. The once peaceful town braced itself as the story unfolded, revealing the darkness that can hide behind even the most pristine facades. Jacob Callahan was the embodiment of reliability in Cedarville. At 39 years old, he was the person neighbors called when their faucets leaked or their fences sagged. His warm smile and steady demeanor gave him an almost comforting presence in the town. For over a decade, he and Helena had built a life together in their modest home. Though their marriage appeared strong to outsiders, cracks had started to form long before that fateful night in July 2010. Helena, once captivated by Jacob's stability, grew restless as years of routine dulled her ambitions. She longed for more excitement, more luxury, and more attention. Helena's dissatisfaction wasn't lost on Jacob, but he remained devoted. He continued to work long hours, believing that providing for her was enough. It wasn't. She began distancing herself emotionally, spending evenings at upscale events she claimed were for networking. It was at one of these gatherings in late 2008 that she met Michael Trent, a man whose charisma and ambition were everything Jacob was not. Michael, 42, had his own baggage. A recent divorce had left him seeking distraction, and Helena provided exactly that. Their connection was immediate and intoxicating. For months, they met in secret, their relationship fueled by shared dissatisfaction and dangerous fantasies of a different life. By the summer of 2010, their affair had intensified. Jacob, though unaware of the full extent of Helena's betrayal, sensed a change in his wife. On July 14th, 2010, his suspicions became reality. Returning home early from a job, he found Helena and Michael together. The confrontation was as explosive as it was inevitable. Neighbors later recalled hearing muffled shouting from the house, but no one intervened. Inside, tensions escalated to a breaking point. Michael's temper, already heightened by fear of exposure, boiled over. What started as an argument became physical when he struck Jacob with a heavy, blunt object from the kitchen. The room fell silent. Jacob's body lay crumpled on the floor, his lifeless form a stark reminder of how far things had spiraled out of control. Panic set in quickly. Michael was visibly shaken, but it was Helena who took charge. Her reaction was chillingly pragmatic. Seeing an opportunity to rid herself of the man she had grown to resent, she convinced Michael they had no choice but to cover up the crime. Together, they wrapped Jacob's body in a tarp, their hands trembling as they worked. Every sound seemed amplified: the rustle of the tarp, the scrape of the shovel, the hollow thud of dirt hitting the ground. Over the next few hours, they buried Jacob in the backyard. The chosen spot was not random. Helena had often spoken about installing a patio there, a detail that now served as the perfect cover. As the first rays of dawn broke over Cedarville, the once pristine lawn bore the marks of their gruesome act. Exhausted but resolute, Helena began crafting their alibi. By mid-morning, she had called a few friends, casually mentioning that Jacob had left the house after an argument the night before. Her tone was calm, her delivery flawless. In the days that followed, Helena set her plan into motion. She planted small details to support her narrative, mentioning Jacob's supposed growing dissatisfaction with his life to anyone who would listen. She even left a note in his handwriting on the kitchen counter, suggesting he needed time away. Meanwhile, Michael became a constant presence at the house. Though neighbors raised eyebrows at his frequent visits, Helena brushed off their concerns, claiming he was helping with home renovations. By December 2010, the transformation was complete. Michael had moved in, his belongings seamlessly integrated into the home he had once visited in secret. To the outside world, Helena seemed to have moved on from her husband's sudden departure. Few questioned her decision to remarry so quickly, though whispers of impropriety circulated among Cedarville's more observant residents. On a chilly afternoon in February 2011, Helena and Michael exchanged vows in a backyard ceremony. Friends and neighbors gathered to celebrate, their laughter filling the air above the very spot where Jacob's body lay. The choice of location was audacious, almost taunting. The new patio, adorned with string lights and potted plants, became the centerpiece of their nuptials. Photos from the day would later horrify investigators, the stark reality of the scene forever captured in smiling faces and clinking glasses. For months, Helena and Michael lived as though nothing had happened, but secrets as dark as theirs have a way of surfacing. On March 20th, 2011, the facade crumbled. Forensic evidence collected from the tarp and tools in the garage painted an undeniable picture. Fibers from the tarp matched traces found in Helena's gloves and under Michael's fingernails. Soil samples from the shovel matched the backyard's disturbed ground. Confronted with this mountain of evidence, Michael broke first. In a tearful confession, he detailed the events of that fateful night, his voice shaking as he implicated Helena as the mastermind. He described her cold determination, her insistence that they would be free to build a new life together if Jacob was out of the picture. Helena's arrest sent shockwaves through Cedarville. The woman, who had once been a fixture at charity events and community gatherings, was now at the center of a murder investigation. Her composed exterior cracked under the weight of mounting evidence, but she maintained her innocence, claiming Michael acted alone. As the truth unraveled, the town struggled to reconcile the Helena they thought they knew with the woman capable of such calculated cruelty. The events of July 14th, 2010, marked the beginning of a dark chapter for Cedarville. Jacob Callahan's death was not just a tragedy. It was a betrayal of the deepest kind, carried out by the people he trusted most. The aftermath left a permanent scar on the community, a chilling reminder of how far ambition and deceit can drive a person. The trial began in January 2012, and the courtroom in Cedarville's Jefferson County Courthouse buzzed with tension. The air inside felt heavy with the weight of the case. Local reporters mingled with national media outlets, all eager to cover what was being described as one of the most shocking cases of betrayal and murder in recent history. Helena Callahan, poised but visibly worn, sat beside her defense team, her face a mixture of defiance and unease. Across the room, Michael Trent, her former lover and co-defendant, avoided her gaze, his once confident demeanor replaced by a look of resignation. The prosecution, led by a sharp and relentless district attorney, meticulously laid out their case. They described Helena as the mastermind, a woman whose ambition and greed had led her to manipulate Michael into committing murder. They painted her as cold-hearted, driven by her desire for wealth and freedom, from a marriage she saw as stifling. The prosecutor presented chilling evidence, receipts for luxury items purchased with Jacob's drained savings, the freshly renovated home paid for with his money, and photographs of the couple's backyard wedding held directly over Jacob's grave. Each piece of evidence deepened the audience's disbelief and outrage. Michael Trent's role in the murder was undeniable, but his testimony became the cornerstone of the prosecution's case against Helena. He spoke of their affair in measured, almost rehearsed tones, recounting how Helena had captivated him with her promises of a life together, free from the constraints of her marriage. He described the night of the murder in painstaking detail, admitting his role in the attack, but insisting that Helena had orchestrated the events. According to his account, she had urged him to act, framing the situation as their only path to happiness. Throughout Michael's testimony, Helena remained stone-faced, her expression betraying little emotion. Yet, her defense team worked tirelessly to discredit him. They argued that Michael, not Helena, had acted out of jealousy and rage, portraying her as a victim of his manipulative tendencies. They pointed to his history of short tempers and impulsive decisions, suggesting that he had fabricated elements of his story to secure a lighter sentence. The defense painted Helena as a woman caught in a web of circumstances beyond her control, struggling to maintain her composure in the aftermath of her husband's disappearance. The trial took a darker turn when the prosecution presented a series of love letters exchanged between Helena and Michael. Written in the months leading up to Jacob's death, the letters revealed a dangerous obsession. They spoke of forbidden love and a desperate longing to be together, even if it meant taking drastic measures. One letter, in particular, left the courtroom silent. In it, Helena wrote of how Jacob's presence made her feel trapped, and how she dreamed of a life where she and Michael could start over at any cost. Witnesses for both sides added layers of complexity to the narrative. Neighbors described Helena's erratic behavior in the months following Jacob's disappearance, recalling how her demeanor shifted from withdrawn and somber to outwardly jubilant. One neighbor remembered her laughing and hosting a dinner party just weeks after Jacob was last seen, a memory that sent shivers through the courtroom. Meanwhile, former colleagues of Michael testified about his temper and history of conflicts, casting doubt on his claims of being Helena's pawn. As the trial progressed, the emotional toll on Jacob's family became evident. His elderly mother attended every session, clutching a photograph of her son and wiping away tears as details of his brutal death were recounted. Friends of Jacob spoke of his kindness, his unwavering dedication to his work, and his dreams of building a better future with Helena. Their testimonies served as stark reminders of the life that had been stolen and the void left behind. The trial reached its conclusion in early March 2012, nearly a year after Jacob's body had been discovered. On March 6, 2012, the jury delivered its verdict. The courtroom was packed, the air electric with anticipation. Helena was found guilty of first-degree murder. The verdict, a reflection of the jury's belief that she had orchestrated the crime. Her sentence was life without the possibility of parole, a judgment that sent a ripple of relief through Jacob's grieving family. Michael, having cooperated with the prosecution, received a 25-year sentence for second-degree murder. His cooperation earning him a reduced charge, but sparing him no sympathy from the public. As Helena was led out of the courtroom, flanked by guards, she maintained the same composed exterior she had displayed throughout the trial. But for those who had followed the case, the verdict marked the end of a dark chapter. The story of Jacob Callahan's life and untimely death left an indelible mark on Cedarville, a small town forever changed by the chilling betrayal that had unfolded within its borders. The trial and its aftermath served as a somber reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath seemingly perfect facades. For Jacob's family and friends, justice provided some closure, but the pain of his loss would linger for years to come. The case left Cedarville with an unshakable sense of loss. The streets, once filled with the hum of neighborly conversations and the laughter of children, now bore an air of solemnity. The Callahan home, where so many memories of Jacob had been made, stood as a somber reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded within its walls. By late 2012, Jacob's family decided to sell the property. They couldn't bear to see it anymore. A place that once symbolized love and hard work, now forever tainted by betrayal. The infamous backyard patio, the centerpiece of Elena's grim deceit, was the first thing to go. The new owners of the house, unwilling to live with its dark history, had it demolished. The ground where Jacob's body had been buried was turned into a small garden. Neighbors who passed by often noted the contrast, vivid flowers blooming where the darkest secret in Cedarville's history had been concealed. Yet the transformation couldn't erase the memory of what had happened there. Jacob's family channeled their grief into something meaningful. In early 2013, they established the Jacob Callahan Memorial Fund, a charitable organization designed to support local businesses and struggling families. Jacob had always been the kind of man who offered a helping hand, and his family wanted his legacy to reflect that spirit. The fund became a beacon of hope for Cedarville, a way to heal wounds and bring light to a community overshadowed by tragedy. Helena Callahan, meanwhile, adjusted to life behind bars. By 2014, she had granted several interviews to true crime authors and documentary filmmakers, each time maintaining her innocence. In carefully staged appearances, she spoke of her life as a victim of circumstance, claiming she had been manipulated by Michael and misunderstood by the public. She often portrayed herself as a woman who had been unfairly vilified, her words painting a picture of regret and defiance. For those who watched, however, her lack of genuine remorse was glaring. She avoided discussing Jacob, rarely mentioning his name, and focused instead on how the trial had robbed her of the life she had built. Despite her efforts to reshape the narrative, the people of Cedarville were unmoved. For them, the truth was clear. Helena had not just betrayed her husband, but had desecrated the trust of a man who had loved her unconditionally. To the community, her interviews served only to reinforce the image of a woman consumed by greed and ambition, willing to sacrifice anything or anyone to achieve her desires. Michael Trent's life, after his release from prison, would also become a subject of curiosity. His reduced sentence, granted for his cooperation, was viewed by many as a necessary compromise. But even after serving his time, he would never escape the shadow of his involvement. Those who knew him described a man haunted by guilt, his once charismatic demeanor replaced by a quiet, withdrawn existence. Unlike Helena, Michael did not seek the spotlight. He avoided public attention, retreating into anonymity, a stark contrast to the confident man who had once charmed his way into Helena's life. For Cedarville, the story of Jacob Callahan was more than a crime. It was a painful chapter that revealed the fragility of trust and the depths of human betrayal. His death became a cautionary tale, one often recounted in quiet conversations over coffee or during late-night porch gatherings. Parents would tell their children about Jacob's kindness and warn them of the dangers of ambition unchecked by morality. By 2015, the scars of the case began to fade, but they were never completely gone. The garden that replaced the patio flourished, its blooms a bittersweet symbol of resilience and renewal. The Jacob Callahan Memorial Fund had grown, helping dozens of families rebuild their lives. Yet, every time someone passed by the old Callahan home, they would remember. They would remember the man who had been taken too soon, the woman who had betrayed him, and the quiet strength of a community determined to move forward. And so, the question lingered, whispered in hushed tones or pondered in solitude. How does love turn so dark? Was it greed, lust, or something far more sinister? The tragic tale of Helena Callahan serves as a haunting reminder of the lengths people will go to escape the lives they've built. But as the years passed, one question continued to resonate.